Alright guys, in this video we're going to continue, but we're going to actually change our topic a little bit into what is called Pulse Width Modulation, or PWMing, in LED. And in this week's module you'll see some tutorial essentially on it and its sort of applications, the theory background behind it. Alright, but on this side, let's take a look on what you have to do in Firefly. And it's actually very simple, but there are some restrictions. So first off, you'll notice that in all these UNO write digital outputs, there are some that have this squiggly line behind it, right? And there are some that don't. And if you right click on any of the digital pins, let's say if we look at pin 13 as we were earlier, you'll see that you actually have a selection of digital and servo. And digital is basically the on and off that we were working with earlier, whereas servo is something that's used to control servos, and we'll get to a little bit later. But if you click on one of the ones that have the squiggly line, then you actually get another option, which is the PWM option. So in this case, for example, let's use D pin 11, right click on it and change this mode to PWM. Okay, and then of course, because I was saving things, I turned all these to false, but now let's turn this stuff on. This blink thing is still going on, but we can kind of ignore. If you activate it, it'll be going on, right? But we can actually delete it, all that, for this particular exercise. Okay, so we want to be working with D pin 11, and because it's set to PWM, and if we actually take a look at the sort of PWM theory page, then you will actually see that essentially the way it works is that you specify values between 0 and 255. So because of that, what we want is actually an integer slider that goes from 0 to 255. And just like we did before, I double clicked on the search bar, typed in numbers and said OK, enter, and you get a slider that goes from 0 to 255. And if you connect this to D pin 11, then you'll see actually that output becomes that number instead of being a binary high, low, or 0, 1. Now what you have to do is to actually connect this, your simple LED circuit from before, where is it? Take this circuit, and instead of connecting the +5 or the sort of signal line from pin 13 as it is here, move it over to pin 11, and then you will actually be able to use this 0 to 255 to control the dimming behavior of the LED. Okay, and yeah, and that's PWM in a nutshell. Now in the class, as part of the exercise, I'll ask you guys to use the original circuit, and then on the circuit replace the resistor with a potentiometer, which is a turning knob. It's essentially a resistor that has a variable resistance depending on where you turn the knob. And you can also use that as a manual way, essentially, to fade or control the intensity of an LED by changing the resistance of the resistor, right? That's also something that kind of figures into the brightness equation of an LED. Now the other thing you guys will eventually be doing is to actually add on what's called an RGB LED. Now this RGB LED will require a different circuit setup that you will see here. So if you look at this, in some ways it's essentially the same, except instead of having just a ground and an input, it has a separate red, a separate green, and a separate blue input. And so because of that, you'll see that these three are all connected to, in this case, 11, 10, and 9, which is all the digital outputs with a squiggly line. That means they're also all capable of being able to use PWM outputs. And then the one ground just goes to ground. And so it's kind of the idea of taking a single LED circuit, multiplying by 3, taking 3 of them and sort of mashing them together, except they share the same ground line. Alright? So these are the things you'll need, etc., etc. We'll kind of look at that in class. But on the code side, or on the side of Firefly, so you'll see essentially you need to take all 9, 10, and 11, right click on them, actually in Firefly not all of them are capable of doing PWM, so actually we might want to change this to 3, 5, and 6. So in the case of the RGB LED, let's copy this 3 times, align them, that. You might want to do this. And right click PWM, right click PWM, right click PWM. So your D pin 3, 5, and 6 are all going to be PWM outputs. Therefore, in your wiring setup for this guy, instead of connecting to 9, 10, 11, which is possible through code, connect it to 3, 5, and 6. Okay? Just make sure you realize that. Alright, and that's it. That's just what you need to be able to control or fade PWM and RGB LED.